Okay. Good afternoon. Happy April 1st, 2021. Can't believe we finally made it to April. The March Madness is still rolling. We're down to the Final Four, but March Madness is still going on. I think we've got opening day today. So for baseball fans out there, so spring is upon us. So welcome to the annual SACAC conference, virtual, obviously, for 2021, and excited to be here. So we're going to talk to you a little bit today about the power of presence, being in the right space at the right moment, which especially in this unique recruitment cycle that we've just gone through is certainly critical. So that's where we're gonna get started today. So as I already mentioned, the right space, using the right tools, the right behavior, and conveying the right message, wanting to make sure that that we are providing prospective students with what they want to know when they want to know it. And so there's a lot that goes into that, and obviously there's a lot of different tools and things to utilize, and it's finding the best fit and the best mix. So that's what we're going to take a look at a little bit today. So I want to introduce my good friend and colleague, Chase Davis at Palm Beach Atlantic. So I'm going to let him say hello, and then I'll introduce myself, and we'll jump right in. So Chase.
Hey, everybody. Again, like Ken said, my name is Chase Davis, and I'm Dean of Admissions currently at Palm Beach Atlantic University. And, I'm glad to be joining you guys virtually. What an odd time. I think it's, just been a weird year in higher ed and our lives in general. And so it's good to still stay connected in the professional world through SACAG 2021. And so we're glad to be here. Hopefully today's session will be very valuable. Excited to kind of share my insight and experiences from this year alongside Ken.
Thanks, Chase. Good to see you again.
Yes, sir.
At some point, I'm going to make my way down there to where you are.
In South Florida.
Yeah, I'm located in Central Ohio. And so Chase and I are typically in communication pretty frequently, and it's always fun to get that weather update of how he's doing down there compared to where I'm at in Ohio. So again, my name is Ken Sigler, Senior Account Executive at Capture Higher Ed. I spent roughly 17 years or so on campus, primarily in admissions and enrollment management. Have worked for a number of institutions, small private, as well as large state universities, and have been with Capture now for a little over 3 years in my current role. So really feel fortunate to partner with Chase and to partner with Palm Beach Atlantic, and look forward to the conversation we're going to have today. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to kind of work through what this last cycle was like, and experience it through the eyes of Chase in the role of Dean of Admissions, and going to kind of walk through what this looked like and where we're going from here. So I think a lot of you will be able to resonate and hopefully be able to take away some things that really speak to, again, that importance of being where our prospective students are and giving that message just at the right time. So when we talk about adjusting strategy, Chase, I'm just interested in, tell us a little bit about just those very early conversations with leadership when reality sets in that our campuses are closing and we're not going to have that same reach with our prospective students, especially in the midst of yield season. This came down pretty heavy last March. April, things really began to close off. And so you're right in the midst of connecting with these accepted students and then making final decisions. And just give us some insight into what those early conversations were like with your institution's leadership.
Sure, absolutely. So a little bit of background for everybody. I actually made a transition to Palm Beach Atlantic in June of 2020, so in the heart of the pandemic. And before that, I was at another institution as assistant vice president for undergraduate enrollment. And so I was at the previous institution in March when that decision came down that, hey, this is very serious, and we're going to have to go immediately into a quarantine/remote operation. And I remember going in and saying, okay, great. As the leader of that team in the undergraduate side of the house, I immediately had to come up with a plan for how we'll work remote, because that wasn't something that was typical except when you're recruiting as an admissions counselor or recruiter. So took the operations team, took the entire recruitment team remote in a day. And luckily for us, we had a strong support system from the IT side of the house. And we also had that just across the university. And we were able to do that. But in that conversation, I think everybody at that institution realized immediately, this is going to be a very, very different 2 weeks at the time. We were expecting just 2 weeks, and maybe the worst case scenario was 4 weeks. And we said, this is going to be the hardest 2 weeks, 4 weeks of our life, and from a professional side. And so we just kind of buckled down, and everyone said, you know what? This is going to put a dent in kind of what we're expecting, because this is not only impacting our operation, but it's also impacting student decisions. I mean, there are families out there who we all now know what a serious impact that was. And so those conversations were going back and forth. So at the cabinet level, and then with my team, what is the expectation for the next 2 to 4 weeks? And as we kind of went along was when those conversations kicked up into, this is long-term. What are the expectations now for our fall class? What are the expectations for the future? And, we kind of launched into this. All expectations are gone. We just have to work hard, and we have to find ways and tactics to really connect with our students. And that's kind of where we saw not only Capture, but some of our other partners and other strategies kind of jump in there. So those were the first days, taking me back now over a year. What a surreal time.
Yeah, man, it sure was. And I do remember those conversations, like, man, I think this is 2, maybe 3 weeks, even if it's a month, here's what we need to do. And I just think back, like, man, we had no idea what was coming. So yeah, that's interesting. So talk to us a little bit about maybe what that first course of action, or what you felt like, the first piece that you needed to roll out with your prospective students.
So, once we got through the operationally, how do we do this? How do we take a team of 15 and put them all remote when half of them never have worked remote? Once we got past that, we realized, if this is going to be, campus tours will shut down for 2 weeks solid, if not more than that. How do we do that? We had tours that were scheduled. We had an event that was scheduled that we were supposed to pull off in the next 2 weeks that we had to cancel. And so that was one of the things where the first course of action was to shore up everything we had to cancel, making sure those students knew that, and then putting in some different plays basically to how do we connect with them. It was hard. We took the first week, really probably the first 2 weeks, once we realized it was going to go longer, and said, let's pull back on our hardcore sales and marketing tactics, because everybody was reeling. And so the first course of action was really to change our language from, come to our institution to, we hope you're safe. We hope that you're doing what's right. We're still here, but we understand that we're all in this together. I'm calling to check in on you. I'm texting you to find out how your family is. Not necessarily, hey, let's get that transcript in because your school's closed and we can't get it. And so the first course of action was to change the way we thought about business. It wasn't about making a sale. It wasn't about making students come to our institution. It was about connecting. And once we worked past that, the next thing was to beef up operationally, was to beef up all of our video and website assets. At the institution I was at, we were already halfway there. And so we were able to operationalize really quickly to update a lot of our video, really any of our media. And so that was the first course of action past, loving people.
Yeah. That's a great point. I love that. You could refer to it as several different things, but it made me think of having some real emotional intelligence, right? And really being able to have some empathy and connecting with prospective students that, we've got this bulleted list of things you need to get checked off for a completed application for us to be able to make a decision. But this just is not the priority right now, and really recognizing where some of these families and students were. So I like that a lot. That's great.
Yeah. And that was actually the first point, to our presentation here, is that was maybe the first point where we realized how important it was that the right message to the right people at the right time was really coming into play, was right then at the beginning. And that was the theme throughout, even to this day. So just kind of a funny synergy and connection there.
It is. Yeah, it is. And so how does that relate then to the message you shared with your own team internally?
Yeah, it was much the same, taking a team that most of my staff, half of the staff had children who, were out of school. They're trying to figure out how they care for their kids, while also making sure they're still going to be paid and have a livelihood. And so that message to the team for them was the same thing. We've got to take care of each other, but we have a job to do, but we're all here as a team to kind of work through this together. And, the first thoughts, like I was talking about, was, how do we get these students still to finish their applications and to get their documents in? And it was, hey, we're less worried about that right now. We're less concerned about that. Let's focus on each other. Let's focus on the students. We've got to make sure that they know we're an institution that's them. And that was the message to the team too. We'll get through this by changing and adjusting strategies and tactics in day-to-day operations, but we can't forget that we're all humans and people here. And so that was the first message to them as we transitioned into what are we going to do to actually recruit now.
Yeah, and that's such a key point too, is that reassurance to your team that there's still some stability here, that you still have a livelihood. We're going to have to pivot, but you're not all losing your jobs, and we're going to kind of find our way through this together. So right. That's good. So a couple more practical things that I wanted to throw out here for you. Some things that we saw change across the landscape of admissions. Right away, we saw the domino effect of a couple prominent selective institutions become test optional. And that just quickly dominoed into hundreds of institutions choosing test optional. And then just, adjusting and making more realistic projections of where your fall numbers might be, as well as the amount of aid that you're going to have to offer to yield that class. So just maybe touch on a couple of those points.
Yeah, we went immediately. We went test optional because that was a necessity if we wanted students to be able to have a hope for college the next year, in our opinion. And I think too, at PBA where I am, and I came in June, we also adjusted that strategy. We were, typically, like most institutions, require that test score, and so we opted for test optional, test preferred model for this year because we wanted to ensure that students had that ability. That wasn't going to keep them. Nobody could control that. And it did lead to us not only adjusting this fall 20 class at the previous institution to set right expectations, based on how coronavirus and just everything was impacting that class. But it also made us have to think forward for fall 21 and adjust that realistic expectation. And so we had to have serious conversations around, obviously we all work for an organization, and the revenue engine a lot of times is tuition dollars from student enrollment. And, we have to balance that with how do we continue to do that with what's the realistic expectation for a head count. And so we did that. And then, just in terms of aid, I think lots of things just got turned on its head. It's a totally different world now with how coronavirus has expanded and both hurt and in some ways, helped institutions in terms of what they're doing with their aiding and awarding and trying to look at student situations and award them with some of the funding that we've received. So big strategy changes and big operational changes.
I can imagine. All right. So as we sort of move into that fall of 21, really the thought of identifying who it is we really need to reach. Talk to us a little bit about that process as you looked at some historical trends.
Yeah, I think one thing that happened is that we saw a lot of students who were out of state be less interested in traveling out of state. So being in a destination location in West Palm Beach, Florida, so South Florida, not to make anybody jealous, it's 75 degrees in the wintertime, beautiful weather, sun shining, I can hit the beach on Christmas, those kind of things. Even all of that draw, coronavirus, COVID, all of that really changed it. People wanted to be close to home, and we pull a lot from the New York area, the Northeast, the Midwest, and we saw students, especially going into the fall 20 class, it be a very serious consideration. But even as we looked forward to fall 21, we realized this is something that will continue. Our outside class, out of state class was going to kind of be hit hard by that. So we needed to figure out a way to either, get in their market, whether physically, and that was a tough thing for us to do this year, or digitally. And so we had to do that and then change the way we thought about the state of Florida and really attack the entire state.
So as you look at those historical trends as compared to, what you needed for inquiry and app numbers, as well as, what campus visits would look like, what was sort of the idea there of how you needed to pivot?
Well, with the move to test optional, and really the trend that less students were going to take the traditional entrance exam, so ACT, SAT, we really purchased very low amounts of names this year. We bought some senior names, but for the most part, we really didn't buy any. And we instead opted to go with some other partnerships that allowed us to name match, and then working with Capture obviously to help us build some of our organic identification. That was big. And then be able to track those who are on our website from home, just hitting our website and engaging with us kind of stealthily. We were able to kind of identify what they're doing, what message they needed to hear. And so we kind of leaned on that this year. In terms of application numbers, we know that there's a good chance that MELT will be a little bit higher for fall 21. It depends on how the next few months go. Right now, I think everybody's kind of waiting to see how things open up or change. But we didn't know that then. So we were kind of anticipating and baking in the potential for some MELT and needing to increase our application pool. And so we have some of the strategies that I think we'll talk a little bit later on. But we also knew campus visits were going to be very, very dismal this year. And up until this point, we've had 50% capacity this entire year, which is tough because that's a big selling point for our institution. So we looked at that.
Okay. All right. So knowing that you're gonna need some more inquiries and applications, specifically the right inquiries and applications, getting away from necessarily that huge volume, but really narrowing in on the students that are most likely going to eventually apply and enroll at PBA. Talk to us a little bit about some of these strategies. So I know that you all utilize Common App. You also were able to increase some engagement with niche, as well as some capture strategies. So tell us a little bit about how that conversation went.
Yeah, the Common application was great for us in that it really expanded. We were a new partner this year and something we had already been planning at PBA before the pandemic hit. But it's been great for us because it has increased our application and our footprint across the nation. So we didn't know it then, but it turned out to be a great lead generator and application generator for us in those markets that we actually thought we would lose interest because we couldn't travel to. So the Northeast and the Midwest. And so that's been really great, but it's also helping us craft our student profile a bit. So that's been something that's helped boost both inquiries and applications. We did increase our engagement with niche. That was something, one of those ways to garner leads that wasn't your traditional ACT or SAT name buy. And that was just another one of those that helped us. Being in a destination location, you see a lot of people search for Florida and colleges in Florida, and Niche is great with their SEO. And that also was a good strategy for us. And then, Capture was big. So I have been a partner with you guys for 5 years across 3 different institutions. And,
right.
It's been different at every one, which is great, but there's something that you provide as a partner that helps us strategize in these times. And, for us at PBA, when I came in, we started working with you, it was, we really need to look at what are students who are on our website doing? Who are they? And then we needed to deliver them messaging immediately outside of your traditional email funnel communication every week, And so Capture, partnering with us, was able to help us identify students who we already had in our funnel, but then know when they went to a certain web page, okay, we can follow that with a very targeted communication by email that will catch their interest, or we can deliver them a pop-up on our homepage or whatever it is to drive action. And that's some of the strategies that we've done. And that helped us generate inquiries and identify students and ultimately push our applications this year.
Yeah, I think these are great illustrations when we talk about the power of presence, really being where the students are and really serving those relevant and very timely messages. When we can connect, that this student that we're tracking that's visiting your site, we know where they fall in the funnel, right? And we know they're a current applicant, but we may also know that they haven't visited campus yet. And so being able to help encourage that campus visit, making sure they know the opportunities and where to go to register and things of that nature, I think are pretty significant.
Exactly. I mean, being able to take a student who has submitted an application, not completed everything for that, who is on our website and is looking at finances, they're looking at the financial aid, they're looking at the scholarships, they're looking at these things, and then they're going to, say, the biology major page, and they're coming back to financial aid. That's something that was really interesting and really powerful for us, because we know this student already at the application phase is wondering, is this an institution that I can afford? Is it going to fit for me? And Capture and what we're doing with you guys really allows us to deliver the message then to what they need to know.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would also say you could look at it from the other perspective too, on who not to reach out to, right? Because we want the counselors to feel confident in who they're reaching out to, and to be able to prioritize. Time is of the essence. And so in the same respect as the example you just gave, you could have someone who inquired back in October, but has never applied, and we can see that they've not been on your site since November, and it's now March.
Exactly.
We're not going to chase that application.
Right.
They're clearly not. So you can use it in that way as well to really prioritize where to spend your time and where to go after the outreach of some of these students.
Yeah, it kind of gives us a data point to say, hey, these applications here that we know, we have this hunch, are not engaged with us since November. This is like real data to say they aren't engaged.
They really aren't
at all.
Right.
Yeah,
right. Absolutely. Well, it was in about every headline throughout the fall and into January and February that FAFSA applications were down. FAFSAs were down. Students weren't submitting. There were also some trend lines that the ones that weren't submitting the FAFSA, unfortunately, were the students that probably needed it the most, those that were from lower income families or maybe might have been Pell eligible. So talk to us a little bit about how that looked like in your funnel and some of the ways that you sought to address that issue.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So at my previous institution, we worked with students from all over the spectrum, different areas, pockets, backgrounds. And you're right. Even then, it was tough with the pandemic, because at the end of the year, there are a lot of what we'll call late bloomers who haven't done these things, and their support system was gone. Schools closed. They didn't have a guidance counselor. They didn't have a teacher. It was kind of just wild for them, and that they lost all that support. And so the FAFSA then, and I haven't looked at the data, but we felt like, those who we hoped would do it so that they could get aid, we saw that drop off, and we had to adjust and move a lot of our virtual meetings and conversations and events. We held those focused specifically on FAFSA and completion. And we've continued that here at PBA, at Palm Beach Atlantic, this year, in that, we're still doing a lot of virtual events. We're having virtual scheduled meetings 2 or 3 days a week in the morning and the afternoon, specifically on the FAFSA, because there's so many, not only in our area, but across the nation, who are still remote, doing remote classes and don't have that support system to help them through that. And so, that is a tough thing that we've had to do, but we just stepped in and said, we've got to try to be the support system. And without any travel this year, or very little, we've had a bit of that capacity to do it.
Yeah, that's great. That certainly was something that it needed and continues to need a focus and concentration on. So we did touch a little bit earlier on the fall travel or non-travel season. So a couple questions here real quick. What were some of the strategies then surrounding, okay, how are we going to, number one, reach this primary market that sits right in our backyard? And if we're reducing some of our name buys, maybe we're not pulling some from our secondary and tertiary markets, what are other ways that we can reach them?
Yeah, the primary market was our focus. And for us here at PBA, it's Florida. It's always Florida, which is a huge state. So those of you out there who are from the state of Florida, you know how large it is and how big of a difference it is from different pockets, but it's still our primary market. It's where most of our students come from. And so we knew we wouldn't be able to get in front of the students in their face in terms of fall college fairs or even visits to their high school. So we deployed a lot of virtual options. That's not only from virtual events, but even virtual one-on-one coffee meetings or just conversations. My team here, the counselors and the recruitment staff, their days are still slammed with Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, and people want it. Students want it. And that was something we did. We beefed up some of our digital communication, digital marketing. Our partnerships that we've had here with Capture and other vendors have really allowed us to tap into that market. I think it talked a little bit about how secondary and tertiary worked for us. We stopped buying names, and that did hit and impact our secondary and tertiary markets a little bit, but we saw that pick up with the Common App partnership. That was big for us. And then just some of the strategies that we're doing with seeing students hit our website now has been really, really beneficial for us. When they hit our website, they fill out a form, and then we're able to kind of communicate and interface and engage with them through this partnership here, actually.
So a couple specific things were the daily visitor report. I don't think we've talked much about that, but we have talked about the triggered emails. So tell us a little bit how you've utilized those two features.
Yeah, the captured triggered emails are really beneficial. And when students hit our website, if they fill out a form that you guys also help us deploy, we can send a triggered email to them anywhere from 6 to 12 hours later that's specific about that form and where they were on the website. And so that's helpful. But even more than that, the DVR, we talked earlier about time is of the essence. And even though it feels like we should have a lot more time without travel, we have less time. You have Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting.
How's that possible?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm sure everybody can relate to that. That DVR is a daily visitor report that sends us a listing by market. So we split it up by territories. So each of the counselors gets one every morning of the visitors to the website the last 24 hours. And it tells us, little Ken Sigler is there and he's looking at, he was on the website at this time. So you can click his record and be able to see, he was looking at the financial aid page and he's an admitted student, deposited student. And so that allows the counselors and the recruitment team to look at that last 24 hours and say, hey, I haven't talked to this student in 3 months. They've been off my radar, but here they are visiting the website today. Let me give them a call and say, hey, is there something I can help you with? I want to see what I can do. And that helps us say, here's our top priority, the last 24 hours. Let's find those students who need help based on their behavior. Again, delivering the right message with the right tools at the right time. That's exactly what it does.
Nice. Very, very good. Very good. I wanted to just bring this up because I think this is important for our audience as well when we talk about the power of presence. Most of our conversation is centered around prospective students, but there's also this presence that counselors have, and this certainly was a jolt to them. And so tell us a little bit about what that new reality was, sort of the day-to-day of your counselors once this shift happened.
Yeah, so going back to when the shift actually took place, March of 20, it was exactly that. It was a jolt. It was, what does this even mean and where do we go from here? Because most of the day was built by, visitors on campus, most of them senior students trying to make their decision. And we were, really working one-on-one, serving our students who are thinking about that institution in a face-to-face capacity. And then it all just went away. And, my team had to pivot and say, wow, I really have to jump in now and forge those connections from my perspective. And so jumping in, it was all digital, it was all virtual, remote, work from home for such a long time. That day was about, I have to go meet with a student from a campus tour. I need to go do a campus tour. And it went from that shifting to, I can actually, which this was a benefit, I could go through every single one of my students and applicants and figure out what it is that they need and how can I serve them. And that was a great change, but it was also a very challenging change because it shifted the whole paradigm in terms of what we were doing in that ability. So it was a new world. And then today's day-to-day is also very different. I mean, we are blessed at PBA to actually be on campus in a safe way this year. But we still in admissions, we're not able to go to high schools. We're not able to do college fairs. We're not able to go out and do conferences like this live and interface. And so their day is totally different. And they're finding ways to be present with students virtually by text message, almost continuous conversation, which is something we were doing anyway, but even deeper. It becomes a friendship rather than a staff member relationship. And so those are things that from a presence perspective have shifted totally. We're really diving in one-on-one with these students and being able to see them virtually and face-to-face by Zoom like this. So very different world.
Yeah, it's been really impressive in a lot of cases to hear about how these admissions counselors have really stepped up and they've been adaptive and they've been able to take on these new challenges and sort of roll with the punches and be successful at the same time. So in a lot of cases, it's certainly been impressive, the leadership and the adaptability that they've shown.
Right. Agreed.
So let's talk about campus tours just for a second here. We have virtual tours and also information sessions, and then we're going to talk about the actual campus tours. Tell us a little bit about what the virtual options looked like.
Yeah, so this year we've deployed a lot of virtual options. We have both events and tours and sessions, and we have multiple sessions. We have virtual sessions with professors. We have offered virtual sessions with counselors and students and financial aid professionals here. So all of those are available for our students, and they can schedule those on their own, 15 minutes here and there, whenever they'd like to do them. But we also do virtual events. So, it started as, let's take what we would do in a normal event and kind of distill it down and put it in this virtual format. To now we've evolved it into, look, students are at home, they're weaving in this virtual day, weaving the visit in with a virtual day of school. And so let's make it 1 hour, 2 hours, and bring them in and go really quick hitting. Hey, here's our provost who has no qualms about getting on a Zoom with students, prospective students, because we can Zoom. Our president can get in and Zoom with them. And so we put the accessibility to our campus is almost, tenfold in terms of using the digital world. So virtual has been great, great attendance there and putting them in front of prospective students. So we've changed that as we've gone along, but it's still very, very beneficial for us.
Good. So talk about the shift when you were able to start offering those campus tours again and what that sort of looked like. I know there were a number of changes.
Yeah. And I'm hoping everybody has been able to open that back up if your campuses are running. But, we want to be safe. Our president here at PBA was very serious about being safe. And so when we brought people back to campus, we knew we needed to, because that's what makes Palm Beach Atlantic special, is our ability to connect in a human world with humans face to face. And so we definitely wanted to do that, but we also wanted to be extremely safe. And so that transition, there was so much planning, making sure disinfecting was accurate, making sure we were doing the pre-check with the temperatures, surveys as they got to campus, distancing, everybody wearing face masks, bringing them in a smaller group. So not having 20, 25 people, but only having, 5 to 10 at a time doing a campus tour. And then for us, we also couldn't take them into res halls. Those were people's residents. We weren't bringing them into residence halls. And so that's also shifted, where we're having to integrate both the virtual and the on-campus live tour. We're having to do a virtual res hall tour before or after the actual tour, because they can't go in those, and then being able to bring them on campus. So I think it's changed for everybody out there. I know it has for us, and we're still adjusting to that as we open campus back up. But yeah, well, quite a event.
It is. Yeah. So you got those new protocols. But I think the important thing is, getting that word out. And again, that power of we're present in the virtual and we're present on campus. And so being able to meet the needs of these families and prospective students, regardless of what they were. We had a lot of conversations early on about, just because your campus is opening doesn't mean that every family and student is going to be comfortable doing that. And so maintaining that presence virtually, as well as having the opportunity to be physically there, I think is a big deal.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit, the next couple slides, as we move into, I mentioned at the beginning, we're April 1st somehow, and so moving into more of yield and melt prevention. There's a couple here that I just wanted to get your thoughts on.
Yeah. So, yield and melt prevention kind of go hand in hand. I think at the point that you yield a student, when we talk about, say, maybe garnering a deposit, you're really starting to address melt prevention too. That's the world we live in from an admissions and recruitment perspective today. So, specifically with Capture, something I've done at 2 institutions now, and we've worked together on actually, is the PID. So this identification form. So we have, a traditional ID form where you're like, hey, here's an RFI. Tell us you want some more information. Tell us you're here. That's one. And we ask, some of those questions and we get that. But as we get into the yield kind of time frame here, what we've pivoted to doing is asking questions that really mean something, that can help us, deliver the right message to a student. We ask, have you visited campus? Have you received your financial aid package? Have you completed the FAFSA? Have you made a decision about your college choice? And we're able to get them their quick yes, no, I'm not sure answers. It's 5 seconds for a student to do it. They move on to the website. We get that information sent to us, and we're able to follow up with that student and say, hey, I see that you have not made a decision, but you've also not visited campus. You've also not received your financial aid package. Let's talk about if we can, make the next steps to get there. So that's been huge for not only yield, but also melt prevention.
For all tipping points, right? So, we had sat down and identified, these are the 4 or 5 pretty major tipping points for our campus. So yeah, absolutely.
And you'd be surprised too, how willing students are to fill it out. Mm-hmm. It pops up, and a lot of times, I know when I peruse a website, sometimes I'm like, where's the X? Let me get out of this quickly, But students, it looks just like that. It's branded. It goes up. It's real easy. It's boom, 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 and then move on. Never shows to them again. So it's simple, and it's been great. And then also yield and not only yield, but melt. We've worked with other vendors, and one of them is Unibuddy. And that's something where we're able to connect students to students in a chat kind of platform. Mm-hmm. And that's been helpful. And with Capture too, being able to drive students who are perusing the website, maybe they start looking at student life and some of these other pages, to be able to show them a toaster pop up that would say, hey, interested in student life? connect with some of our students, and then linking them over to our landing page that is the Unibuddy platform in that partnership. That's how things get powerful, because Capture is great. There are lots of others out there that together make, very, very powerful recruitment tactic.
Yeah, I think you're right. So as you mentioned, a couple melt prevention items here. The virtual in-person, this is one that we talked about earlier on, as well as the call and text campaigns. Any details about those two?
Yeah, call and text campaigns. One theme that I've seen during the pandemic, and maybe everybody else has seen this too, and maybe not, but is that some strategies and tactics that I would call maybe old school that we did earlier in my career, even before. So like calling campaigns and things like that, student campaigns that in the recent years haven't gotten a lot of love and haven't gotten a lot of results out of, became like heavy hitters during this time. And so we launched call and text campaigns from student leaders and faculty across campus, and we got a lot of phone pickups. And so that's something that has been great for MELT, not only this year as we've started that, but even last year. And then we launched both virtual and in person. And now we've been doing some in-person coffee meetups around the state, but also out of state in places as it started to open up. So our markets in the Northeast and the Midwest, and say, hey, come meet me. I'm here in the flesh, just us and your family. We can distance, we can have coffee. It's on us. Let's kind of talk person to person for the first time. So we did that. And we also did it for virtual. Everybody grab their latte and let's sit down and have a virtual conversation. So those things have been great for MELT and for Yield.
I think those are great examples. Speaking of lattes, since we're in the spring and we've got Easter coming up, there's a local coffee place near where I'm at that has peep flavored lattes. Is that a thumbs up or a thumbs down for you?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, maybe it just depends. I'd have to try
flavored lattes.
Wow. Well,
I think that could be a little intense.
I think so.
I don't know if I could start there in the morning. I think that would give me the shakes.
I'd give it a try, after dinner maybe.
Yeah. A little dessert.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, let's talk about we're so focused on bringing in this 2021 class. It's been such a unique recruitment cycle, and yet we have all these sophomores and juniors, starting to raise their hand saying, don't forget about us. We're coming. And so talk about some of those early inquiry strategies for this group.
Right. Again, when you can track them and see what they're doing, when they're filling out a PID form because they're on your website, man, what a powerful tool to be able to directly reach out to them one-to-one and say, hey, I know that, you're interested in us. We're interested in you. We're open for campus tours. Come and see us. That's really powerful. Or, hey, we have a virtual event designed for a 22 and 23. We have those for our juniors and our sophomores and our rising seniors this upcoming summer. And so we have all those that we can deliver specifically to them and say, join us. We see you. We want you to see us. And so that's been extremely beneficial. And that's kind of where we're going to go with this. We can't forget, that students are at home in some cases, not just the seniors, it's the juniors and the sophomores. And so they're also looking. We've seen a rise in the number of juniors and sophomore students who are requesting either campus tours or they're requesting to join one of our virtual events. And so we have a waiting list a lot of times for virtual events that are juniors and sophomores, even though it's a senior event. And so we've allowed them to join what's otherwise a senior event. And we'll continue to do that as we move into the next cycle.
Yeah, I think I've seen that a lot. In the past, I think campuses have been pretty strict is too strong of a word, but we clearly want this to be a senior event. But the way things have gone, you got to sort of take them as they come. So I know the Unibuddy platform was another way of really connecting those sophomores and juniors with current students early on to sort of help get them more information early in the process so they're a little more well informed before they even begin to apply.
Exactly.
Yep. and then we talked about virtual events. So I'm interested to know where you guys sit on April 1 as far as your fall goals.
Yeah, so right now we're about 50% of the way, but based on our trends and kind of what we're projecting this year, we project that after National Decision Day of May 1st, we're going to be sitting around the 80%, if not a little bit better. We've seen a great turnout actually this year, counter to kind of what the apprehension was before. I think we've seen pretty good turnout so far. And then currently, as of today, we're 75% away to our goal for acceptances. And I think that that's a really great place for us to be in a COVID world. We're still there. I mean, it's been very impactful. So
cool. Good deal. All right. So one of my last questions for you here, and I'll let you get off the hot seat. Just interested in general, how you feel like this last recruitment cycle has influenced or shaped the way you're now looking at 22s and 23s, the fall of 22 and the fall of 23.
Right. So I remember back in 2013 or 14, I started to, I was responsible for recruitment and started to pull my team off the road because we were then starting to see softening in the college fair market. We were, budget tight, and we were trying to find ways to do that. And we were able to start plucking back, right, and pulling off some of these college fairs, saving the money and the travel, but still not seeing that impact in the numbers. And that was then. And so as we get to today in 2020, when this really sped up, where everybody went virtual, college fairs were canceled, testing sites were canceled, all of that, it was like, if we haven't already, entered into that paradigm, we needed to do that immediately. We needed to go virtual. We needed to be able to recruit without being in person at college fairs and all of these kind of things. And so it went from push to shove in that regard to we now have to be thinking about robustness, really rich content when it came to virtual offerings and that digital connection, not just by picking up the phone, but how do we text and not be mechanical in that and robotic. And so that right there, because we were required to do that for 2020, that aspect, that paradigm shift to being able to be digitally rich is what I'll say is really important as we move forward, because we're not planning to lessen the number of virtual events we're doing or lessen the number of virtual options that we'll have. We're planning to keep them the same, if not increase those, even in the world of COVID is kind of mitigated and people can be on campus. We're going to use that now as two separate things because they're both very, very rich and robust. And I think that is really going to shape and influence what we're doing in terms of recruitment, because people will want that. They'll say, I could do that during the pandemic. I hope other schools are doing that. I'm in Colorado and want to see what West Palm Beach is all about. I should be able to hop on a Zoom and do it. And so that's one of the things from that recruitment perspective that we've started to do is say, let's adjust what we're doing from that physical recruitment mentality to now digital and virtual. So that's probably the biggest influence that we'll see. And then also just knowing that testing is something that's on the hot seat. I think everybody's seeing that ACT, SAT. I think that will continue to be something we as professionals in the industry have to think about. If test optional is not really in your vocabulary, I think now we've got to think about it. That's how we serve our students. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. I've heard that too. Like, we've had such good engagement in some of these virtual events. Why would we now just throw them all out because our campuses are open again? How can we improve them and continue to make those accessible to students moving forward? So I think that's a great point. Although I'll tell you, I'll admit, probably last January or February, I didn't even know what Zoom was. So it's amazing in such a short amount of time how something like that just becomes part of your everyday, and you almost use it as a noun and a verb now, the Zoom.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so funny. I have a daughter, and she's pretty young, and she now will say, "Are we gonna Zoom? Are we Zooming with them?" When we say, "Hey, we're gonna talk to some," "Are we Zooming? Is it a Zoom?" I'm like, man, that's how odd is that?
It is. It is. It became a part of our day to day, almost overnight. So. All right. Anything else you want to add? I put a slide in here about sort of a post-COVID toolkit. I think we're also anxious to be beyond this COVID, and so I think you talked a little bit about some of the new tools and strategies. But anything else you wanted to add here?
Well, another thing that COVID did in this pandemic was really bring to light that if your media game, if your media library, if that media bank isn't updated and isn't really indicative of your campus, wow, that's something that we've got to do. We had to do that, and I'm sure many of you out there relate to that big time. But that's something that I guess would be a tool and a strategy that we'll lean on in the future, is making sure that we have that bank of media assets that we can really deploy in many, many different ways. We're already going with the virtual, so we've got to ensure that all of that stays up to date. So that's a big, strategy.
Yeah, that is huge. And COVID really brought to light those institutions that didn't have that media bank, that had outdated photos and outdated web pages, and it capture. We are completely convinced because of what we see, but also because of the research that that website is your number one recruitment tool, and it needs to be tight. And we've seen a lot of that work happen over this year because of the reliance on the website more than ever to be able to recruit this class. So, well, I'll tell you what, Chase, it's been super fun. Love hanging out and chatting. I wish we were kind of hanging out together somewhere down at Palm Beach, but I'll say, hopefully soon enough. So thanks for the time this afternoon. This was fun.
Thanks for having me. I'm always glad to be here. So
yeah, no problem. All right. Well, take care. Hope everyone got some good pieces of information. Feel free to follow up with Chase or myself if you have any questions about Palm Beach or Capture Higher Ed. We'd be happy to talk with you. So everybody be safe and enjoy the spring. So take care.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.